If you are inconsistent in trading and you think it's because of discipline or psychology, there's a high chance that you don't even know your strategy works. And that's the mistake that I made early on too. I'll show you 1, why backtesting fixes that, and 2, how to do it properly. I used to think that my problem was discipline. I would have a pretty solid week. I feel like I'd figured it out, but then eventually I would start to give it all back. And every time this would happen, I'd come to the same conclusion: the strategy just isn't it. So therefore, I'd switch. And back in 2023, I started off learning price action. I put time in it, I felt confident, and I had the results, but eventually I'd hit a losing streak. So then I would switch over to ICT. Same thing would happen. I'd have the results, I'd feel like I figured it out, and then I would just end up switching my strategy once again as soon as I hit drawdown. And then I thought, maybe my strategy is just not really consistent with my personality. So I started to experiment with execution. I would switch over into different time frames. So instead of trading on the 4-hour, I started trading on the 1-hour. And looking back, I realized that I was stuck in the same loop. I would try something out, I'd switch as soon as it stops working, and then I would try another thing out, thinking that it would be the one to solve it all. And you want to know what the worst part is? I genuinely thought that I was making progress. But in reality, I never knew whether each strategy was actually working. And the crazy thing is, having spoken to different traders, I can see the exact same pattern in them too. They'd come to me saying, I just can't stay consistent. So I'd ask them, okay, what are you trading? And then they'd walk me through their strategy, their entries, their exits. But then I asked them one single question: what are your statistics? Do you know your trade frequency? Do you know your average risk to reward? Heck, do you even know your win rate? And almost every time that I ask them, they respond with silence. They simply don't know. And this means that I literally cannot help them. If you don't know your numbers, then it means that you don't know what to fix. And if you don't know what to fix, you are essentially just guessing. As a trader, your job is to risk a controlled amount of money, aka how much you're willing to lose, and bet that money on an edge which has a statistical probability of working out over the long term. And this is what allows us to actually make money. However, our brain thinks that in order for us to make money over the long term, we have to be making money in the short term. And that's exactly what keeps us from backtesting. Simply put, it feels boring because when we're placing trades on backtesting, we're not making any money. So therefore, it feels counterproductive to the long-term goal. However, if you want to be making more in the future, you have to be willing to make less now. There's a common saying that if you have 6 hours to chop a tree, spend the first 5 hours sharpening the axe. And sure, obviously, if you had 6 hours and you spent the first 5 hours trying to chop down the tree, you're gonna feel productive. But in the long term, those who chose to sharpen their axe first for the first 5 hours can then use 1 single hour to chop down the tree faster than if you just took your first 6 hours and just started to go at the tree. Remember that it's the boring work which makes the real work easy. People get into trading because they feel desperate to get out of their current situation. They feel as though the only way that they're able to escape that situation is by taking action today. And more often than not, that comes in the form of trades which they don't even know have a statistical probability of working out over the long term. As soon as you place your first trade, so you open up your brokerage account and you load it with funds, once you place that trade, do you know who you're actually competing with? You're competing with people who have been trading in the markets for decades. How do you actually expect yourself to come out with extraordinary results if the work that you put in was subpar? You're essentially wanting to get paid before you're even qualified. Do you know what that's the equivalent of? It's like going to your local gym, playing basketball for 1 to 2 hours a week, and then expecting yourself to be able to compete with NBA players. And mind you, these NBA players probably started playing basketball at the age of like 5 years old or even younger. And up until they were 5, until they were professionals, they spent, who knows, maybe like 20 to even 40 hours a week just on the sport itself. And the reality is 99% of you people who go to the gym for an hour or two, 99% are going to get absolutely smoked. Actually change that, not even 99%. It's like 99.9999% of you guys will get smoked if you were to play an NBA game. Now, luckily, you can't just go out there on TV and actually join an NBA game. But do you know where you can do that in the professional scene? With trading. And that's exactly why people end up getting burned. Ask yourself, why do you think it's any different playing a sport professionally and trading the markets professionally? If you didn't put in the time, effort, and money to basically refine your edge, then you aren't going to stand a chance against the professionals. So if you sincerely want to get out of your current position, then you have to do what a professional does. And what does this mean? It means that you have to track your data. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to memorize all those complicated formulas, Sharpe ratios, and all that. All you have to do is just focus on three main things. And those three things are your win rate, pretty self-explanatory, your average win, particularly in R, meaning the multiples of how much you're risking, and then your trade frequency. Once you have just those three statistics, you can actually project how much your strategy is expected to return over the long term. It can be over the course of a month or even a year. Remember, if no data, it means you have no edge. And if you don't have any edge, it means that you have no profits. But here's the thing. I've been there. I've done that. I get it. Backtesting is extremely boring. It's tedious. It takes a while, but it's necessary. So I'll be showing you how to do it. Step number 0, because this is even before step 1. Stop trading. So if you're currently trading and you know from this video, even up until this point that you've watched, if you know that you don't have an actual statistical edge, just pause. Stop trading, please. You're literally gambling if you do. And remember, there are 2 seasons in life. Number 1, there's a time to earn. And number 2, there's a time to learn. Don't confuse the two. All right, so finally, moving on to step number 1, you want to accumulate a sample size where one single trade does not completely alter your actual statistics. So for example, if you only backtested 5 trades and 4 of them were winners and 1 of them was a loss, you have an 80% win rate. And for whatever reason, if out of those 5 trades, 2 of them ended up being winners and 3 of them were losers, then your win rate all of a sudden drops to 40%. So using really small numbers is not a good gauge of determining your long-term statistics. So for me, what I noticed is statistics start to stabilize somewhere around 50 to maybe 100 trades. And this is because if one of those single trades, so let's say out of the sample size of 50, you had 30 that were winners, on another sample size of 50, only 28 of those were winners, then you can see that the win rate isn't going to change that much. And just for you to see that, when you win 30 out of 50 trades, you have a 60% win rate. And if you won 28 out of the 50 trades, then you have a 56% win rate. So it's not that big of a difference compared to the 2 extra wins if you only had 5 trades. So the second thing that you want to do is backtest 2 to 3 trades at first. And you do this because you want to see how long it takes you. So if it took you 30 minutes to backtest 3 of those trades, then note it down. 2 to 3 trades took 30 minutes. Another thing that is so important when you're backtesting is to track your mental state. And this is super essential because if you can only lock in for 30 minutes at a time, then stop. If you've ever backtested before, you would know that when you inevitably come across a losing streak, it's going to affect your psyche, even just a little bit. So when you start to notice your psyche dropping alongside your mental state, like how burned out you are, then you want to stop trading, or you want to stop backtesting rather, because you want to make sure that each one of these trades are actually in accordance with your criteria. And if they aren't, then it pretty much means that you're accumulating data which isn't accurate with your actual statistical edge. One thing that I like to keep in mind is that if your focus is bad, then you're going to have bad data. And if you have bad data, then you're going to have bad decisions. Of course, this is when you're actually trading in real time with live money. And third, you want to take your desired sample size. So in this case, we'll say 50, and then divide it by the number of trades you can take while your mental capital is still fresh. So for me, that was around 4 to 5 trades. We're just going to say 5 trades for now, just for math's sake. And once you actually divide this, so we'll get 10, then this is how many sessions it will take in order for you to get to the number of trades that you wanted to. In this case, it's 50. And depending on your schedule, so in a normal week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you want to schedule in as many of these sessions as you possibly can. So if you can do maybe 2 sessions, then you can get it done all in a week, right? You can do it in the evening and then maybe right before you go to bed, or you can do one in the morning. It doesn't matter. It just depends on your own individual schedule. And this is so important because when you have a deadline, so in this case, it might be Friday, it actually gives you something to look forward to. So every day that you complete one single session, right, you got 1 and then 2, every single time you're doing that, you are essentially getting closer and closer to the end goal. It's kind of as if you were walking on a road and all you see is just the same sight over and over. And you think to yourself, man, there's literally no end goal. Can you imagine just how unmotivated you'd be to finish? Rather, if you can actually see the end goal in sight, right, you're going to feel so much motivated to actually just keep taking one step forward, one step forward, one step forward until eventually you get to that finish line. And one very important tip, one key tip is to make sure that you screenshot every single trade, because eventually when you're going to be making those small minor tweaks in the future, you don't want to have to go back all the way to every single date and mark out the exact same charts, the exact same entries, the exact same stop losses and everything. You just want to screenshot it so you can go back to those screenshots, and it makes the process just so much more easier and simpler and convenient. And once you're at this point, then congrats. It means that you finally made it to the finish line. And at this point in time, you now have all of the data that you need to gain that long-term conviction and actually stick with that strategy. Trust me, when I say that your future self, this is you in the future, or rather your present self, I'd say, you're going to thank your past self, aka you right now, who has to be doing the backtesting. It will be so thankful of the fact that you backtest your strategy, because then you're not likely to jump ship and just start a new strategy just because you're losing. And mind you, even though you might have to set time aside backtesting, think about how much time you spent in that same previous cycle of switching to a new strategy, thinking that it's going to work, becoming hopeful, and then having to reset and find out another strategy. Like, those cycles take, man, like so many years of time and wasted, I'm going to say, effort. So if you had just backtested your edge and you kept that long-term conviction, then instead of going in a spiral, then you're actually going to be able to move higher and progress. Remember that belief without evidence is delusion. However, if your evidence is supported with data, then you have conviction. I'd like to say that this is all that you need to become profitable, but it's kind of like saying that in order for a car to run, all that you need is the engine. But in reality, you need the tires, you need the actual frame of the car, you need the steering wheel, all of these little minor components that actually is what allows the car to run, or at least be driven. Then, and only then, are you able to say that you have a working machine. And if you are someone who has the engine or they have the strategy, but they're still not able to find that consistency just yet, then I wanted to offer you something that will help you specifically. I'm opening up a few complimentary one-on-one audits, and mind you, complimentary means free, for people who are close to passing evaluations or close to taking out payouts, but they end up giving everything back. In this call, I'll be pinpointing exactly where your execution is breaking down, and most importantly, I'll be giving you a list of what you can do instead. And mind you, this is not for beginners or for people looking for shortcuts. This is for people who want to refine their edge and for people who want to develop consistency in the markets. The call will be 30 minutes, and because I am the one doing them personally, I only offer 3 per week. Once each slot is filled, then you have to wait until next week until more slots open up. Worst case, you end up wasting 30 minutes of your time that you probably would have wasted scrolling Instagram or browsing TikTok or watching Netflix. Best case, you actually find something that you can take away that will actually make you consistent and profitable. So if you're tired of getting close and then blowing up your progress over and over again, don't wait until you restart the same cycle. Book a call now before all the slots are gone.